This week's episode of Fireside is brought to you by Legends of Belize and Wonders Oddities Expo.
Hello, everybody. You're listening to Fireside Paranormal Podcast. My name is Jordan Cline, and as always, I got a fun show planned out for you today. My guest is MR Gorga. He is the best-selling author of Demons Among Us, shocking real-life stories of the paranormal. Before we get to him, just a few announcements.
Legends of Belize is a series about mythical creatures that dwell in the jungles and waters of Belize. The Belizean legends are captured, documented, and preserved like never before in a comprehensive art series and books with fully colored and detailed images of fine art by artists, authors, and award-winning animators Dismas and Grissi G. Discover the supernatural creatures that await deep in the jungles, such as the mysterious dwarf called Tata Duende with backwards feet known to rip the thumbs off of trespassers, or the beautiful shape-shifting woman known to locals as the Ishtabai, who seduces drunks to never be seen again. These creatures and many more can be found in the Legends of Belize books. Learn about the cryptozoological, paranormal, and unexplained creatures that haunt Belize. Be fascinated, be terrified, Belize. Legend of Belize books are available in print and ebook. Buy your copy from your favorite online bookstore such as Amazon, KDP, Apple Books, and many more. Also be sure to visit legendsofbelize.com.
On December 3rd and 4th, the Wonders Oddities Expo and the Tri-State Exotic Animal Expo, they'll be having a convention at the West Virginia State Penitentiary. They'll be accepting donations for Caring Tree for Kids. There's going to be random door prizes all day for paid admissions. There's going to be free pictures with Krampus. The times are on December 3rd, it's going to be 12 p.m. to 8 p.m., and then Sunday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Admission is $10, and kids 12 and under are free. There's only a few days left for voting with the American Paranormal Magazine's Owlie Award, so go cast your votes now at paranormalzine.com. I am in the running, so if you vote for me, it would take me over the top. Remember, go to paranormalzine.com. To kick off our featured stories this week, our first story comes in from Joe.
My name's Joe. Me and my wife, Jenna, went to Gettysburg in the summer of 2021. We're actually from Bel Air, Ohio, and we went to Gettysburg, and we went in the woods by an Ohio monument, and we started asking questions, and put my tape recorder down, and 10 minutes later, I picked it up, played it back, and I got a sigh on it.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's about it. And then we went to a schoolhouse that caught on fire and killed some kids. And then my wife put down her EMF detector and then started reading a child's book, and the EMF detectors just started going nuts. And we didn't get no pictures, but it was cool to, experience that.
Yeah, so every time she started reading it was lighting up?
Yeah, every time she read it, it'd light up.
Thank you, Joe. Up next, Shaylin.
My name is Shaylin Rush. I'm from Sardis, Ohio. Okay. And let's see. We moved around a lot, so I had a lot of interesting things. But when I was a senior in high school, we moved into this old farmhouse in this really, really small, blink and you miss it town in Illinois. And they were renovating, and I moved in with my then boyfriend and my mom and dad and sisters and brothers, and I had a 2-year-old. At first, the house was totally normal. It was just like an older, larger farmhouse. But as time went on, things started to get a little weird. My 2-year-old sleep in bed with me every night, and every night around the same time, it was like 3:30 in the morning, she would wake up screaming and looking at the same part of the wall. So I just thought she was kind of going through a night regression, night terror. It had an attic in a basement, and in the laundry room, it was a massive basement. It covered the whole house. And that's where the laundry room was. Well, the attic, totally fine, nothing wrong with the attic. But when you would turn the corner to go down the stairs into the basement, you could feel like this heavy, it was just like this heaviness. Well, the laundry room was down in the basement right off the steps. My mom was coming up the steps and felt something like, it was almost like it was strangling her. So she thought that was weird, but thought maybe she was just having anxiety or something. And came up the stairs, but she just was very unsettled after that. I have a brother that's a little younger than me. He was in the room far off to the back of the house. And he had always kind of had a little bit of behavioral problems, but it kind of went into just massive behavioral problems, throwing people against walls, throwing things across the room. He had, the older box TVs, because this was back in like 2012, when they were still cool or whatever, you could have them. Him and my...
Make you feel old,
I know. Him and my other brother and a friend's, when they're doing whatever teenage boys do, and he had a cologne bottle on top, and it went flying off the thing. Well, other than that, the most terrifying part of it was I had a brother under that brother, and he wasn't much into like dramatics. He just kind of stayed to himself, and it was a little later in the night, and he comes tearing out of his room, and we were like, what is wrong? And he said, I woke up and something was on top of me. What? I said, what? And he said, I couldn't move. I said, what was on top of you? And he said, I don't know. It was in my face and I couldn't move. And it was just, I couldn't move. And I was like,
oh, wow.
What? And he was, he said, I can't go back in there. I can't go back in there. So we had, over and over and over. Well, my then boyfriend at the time went down back into the basement because he kept his drum set down there. And as he was coming up the stairs, he felt something sharp. And he thought maybe he caught something hanging because he was a pretty tall guy. But he came up to me and said, check, like, something got me down there, but I don't see nothing. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about because nothing's hanging off them, like, because it wasn't completely finished. And he took off his shirt and there was a scratch mark down his back.
Oh, wow.
And that was probably the most terrifying as I got older. But I had, as a younger person, always experienced random things, but that was, the most, demonic-y.
Yeah, that's scary stuff.
It was not a good time. Thankfully, it left me alone, so I guess I'm safe.
Thank you, Shaylin. If you want your story to be one of our featured stories, make sure you send me an email, firesideparanormalpodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget, next week is our Halloween episode, which means it is 100% listener stories. If you have a story, any kind of paranormal, if it's spooky, if it's a UFO, Bigfoot, anything you want to talk about, make sure to email me, firesideparanormalpodcast@gmail.com. You can record it, you can type it out, and we'll read it, but get your stories to me as soon as you can. All right, I want to get to my guest. Join me by the fire as we welcome MR Gorga. He is the best-selling author of Demons Among Us, shocking real-life stories from the paranormal. Sir, are you with us?
I am here. Thanks for having me on tonight.
Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to hearing about your book. Some of these stories, I think it's going to be a lot of fun and really, really good timing because we got the Halloween episode coming up here soon, too. That's all going to be paranormal stories. So I'm going to give you the floor here. Let's talk about it.
All right. Sounds good. Demons Among Us, shocking real-life stories from the paranormal, covers a wide spectrum or swath of the paranormal. It covers the first fully documented, recorded eyewitness account of demonic possession in American history.
Really?
Which was reported 20 years or 2 decades before the Salem witch trials. It rips back the veil of the paranormal so you could tell what's really kind of going on behind the scenes. It talks about how dark influences operate and function in the world around us. And it also has my own personal encounters with black spirits, inhuman entities, and terrifying nighttime visitations.
Now, how did you get into this? Were you an investigator? Did you just grow up kind of surrounded by it?
Well, I've always been a writer.
Okay.
So I was writing since a little kid, and I grew up in a time where, in New Jersey, where Amityville Horror had just kind of come out, and
Wow.
the Son of Sam was running around Brooklyn with a 44 caliber, and just terrorizing the boroughs, and it just sensed like the fear, or that dark tone that just kind of came over the Tri-County area
Yeah.
at that time. Some reason kind of had an effect on me, and it's the stuff I enjoyed writing about. I remember my teacher in fourth grade giving a writing assignment, and so I wrote something about some mummy on a murdering spree, which is probably a little bit too too graphic of content for someone at that age, I would imagine.
The most surprising fourth grade paper that evening.
Yes, exactly. So I turned this story in, and I think it's good. And so I turn it in, and I give it to my teacher, and at that same night, my teacher calls my parents, and I'm like, oh man, I am in trouble. But it was the exact opposite. So he tells my mom, he says, your son has a real talent for writing. You need to sign him up for the Young Authors Club immediately.
Oh, wow.
So I've been writing my whole life. And then I started out in journalism and in magazines, and then I moved over to advertising, copywriting for marketing and advertisements, and ad agencies. And then Demons Among Us is my first foray into the paranormal, and to my surprise, it became a #1 bestseller.
That's really exciting. Good job. I mean, first go at it, and you've hit it. That's a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, it's it's really exciting. I mean, the response has been overwhelming. How people have responded to a book of this type, because when you're writing something like this, the whole time you're thinking, oh man, everyone's going to think I'm crazy, and then it's just the opposite happens, where people just kind of come out of the woodwork and say, well, I've had this happen, and I've had that happen, and and I saw something very similar to what you explained in chapter 3, or so and George Norrie from Coast to Coast, he was this is going to go down as a classic. So to have the kind of accolade from George Norrie,
That's
literally
huge.
almost fell off my chair.
So how did George did you send him a copy, or were you on Coast to Coast?
Yeah, I was on Coast to Coast 2 times.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah.
Man, that's a heck of a compliment right there.
That's what I thought.
Now, is there going to be a part 2? You got people coming out of the woodwork to give you, more stories. Are you going to put it all together?
People keep asking me, and I keep saying, my God, I hope not, because that would mean I have to go through more demonic assaults and attacks. I mean, these are true experiences. I didn't make this stuff up. And so, Demons Among Us is actually an answer to a string of nighttime assaults I was experiencing personally.
Okay, you don't want a second book on that.
Exactly. So I was like, oh God.
Okay, number 2 can be Spirits Among Us. You're welcome for the title, and keep it a little lighter.
Yeah, a little bit lighter, like Angels Among Us.
Yeah. Of course, if I was writing, it'd be Pizzas Among Us.
Well, pizza's good.
I already know I'm gonna get an email at some point. That should be the next shirt. All right, so I'm really you hit my curiosity on this. 20 years before the witch trials, what happened? Can you share that story?
Yeah. So the story is between it takes place in early New England in 1671/1672, between New England's town minister at the time and his young maid or live-in maid servant, who was 16 years old. Her name was Elizabeth, and so what had happened was, she was started to exhibit some strange signs, and it really caused the minister to raise some eyebrows. And after 2 weeks of this, of observing her, it got so peculiar to him that he decided to take to his journal. And the first journal entry is dated October 30th, Monday, October 30th, 1671.
Oh, wow.
And so it was so strange, he started to he took to his journal and started writing a blow by blow for about 3 months or 90 days of everything that was happening to this young girl of his in his house. And so she was exhibiting, signs of, these seizurous kind of fits. And then she would start storming through the home with this howling, raging and roaring and destroying, just destroying the home in a sense. And then 3 or 4 people tried to pin her down, but she exhibited this supernatural strength, just kind of like tossed them off. And that happened twice. And there were episodes where she was trying to throw herself into the fireplace.
Oh, wow.
Was tempted to kill the minister in his sleep one night. And so his whole thing was, he penned all of this stuff, what was going on in the journal, blow by blow. And that's why it's the first fully recorded eyewitness account of demonic possession in American history. He was trying to figure out what was going on with her, what her relationship was with the devil. Was she rightly to be deemed a witch? And he really did something remarkable for the period. Was he had her checked out by a doctor, and he treated her for 2 weeks.
Wow.
And he gave her what they called physic, what we would call medicine. And so it was very much like the saying, he ruled off all kinds of things like epilepsy, ergo poisoning, frenetic melancholy, which today would probably be called like deep depression or something.
Yeah.
So he did something, very, very revolutionary for the time. He just didn't slap the term witch on. In fact, he tried to kind of keep this whole thing under wraps in order so that the authorities or the magistrates at the time didn't find out, because if he knew that, she would have been tried as a witch, which was a capital crime. And in fact, at that period, it was better to be called a murderer than a witch. And at the very least, even if she was to escape that, it would have marred her or scandalized her life, that it would have never went away.
Yeah.
It would have never went away. And so, and he knew this, so he tried to kind of keep this contained, and the whole reason he was writing the journal in the first place was to report to Increase Mather, who was the most preeminent minister of the time, and who was the minister of Boston. So he was really writing this blow-by-blow report for Increase Mather, so they can kind of get together on this case and kind of discuss it. And it turns out that the story or the journal or the report basically didn't see the light of day until 12 years later.
Wow. Now, did it say what her name is?
Yes, her name is Elizabeth Knapp.
Elizabeth Knapp. Now, what happened with her? Like, does the story kind of follow? Hey, they did a exorcism, or did she live through it? But she,
as we go along, she starts to tell more and more and more. She confesses, and then she takes back the confession about her dealings with the devil. It was been called at the time familiarity with the devil or entertaining Satan. And she starts to describe in full detail her true relations with the devil.
oh wow.
And and so I don't want to give away everything.
Oh no, I get you.
But she goes through some very, very, very harrowing details, because one of the mysteries was, was she in league with the devil? Did she sign the devil's book? And this is what we try to unfold as we go along, as the story gets darker and darker day by day. But what happened is, the doctor himself ruled her condition diabolical.
Ooh. So I want to ask, because this book kind of, it starts off with this story and it goes into your personal stories. Do you have any, is there like a family relation by chance? Anything that might tie you into Elizabeth?
Oh, no, not at all.
Hey, you never know. It was worth a shot.
No,
my
it's
great grandmother.
Well, I was, so when I decided to write Demons Among Us, as from my journalistic background, I have a real nose for, investigating, and digging deep into stories and everything. And so when I was writing Demons Among Us, it really took me down some really, some deep, dark rabbit holes. And so when I was researching witchcraft and everything, I came across this story, but the story was like very, very glossed over. And I forget the book, but he was like, well, there was this case and this happened and that happened and ... And I said, well, wait a minute, what's between these ... this ... here, right? And that's what led me down this story. I found out that, there's a journal and there's history behind it, and this was confirmed by medical journals. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. And that's when I decided, like, this was such a harrowing, mind-blowing story that it needed to be in the book.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and not only, and when I talk about research, I'm not just talking about, just on the internet. No, I've actually went to these places, and I've actually touched the physical copies of these parchments from the 1600s, yellow parchment with black flowing script, written in the minister's own hand.
Wow.
I was able to handle and touch and review and study these documents. So when I talk about research, I'm talking about research.
You hands-on. Where are these documents located?
I don't want to say.
They're at my house now. I stole them.
I'll let another researcher do his research.
No, I was just thinking, did you go to where this all took place?
Yes, I've talked to historians. I've seen the properties. The minister's house is still standing.
Wow.
Even to this day. And the property where the grounds where the church or the meeting house stood, where he preached about this case also, is still, the grounds are still there. So
very cool.
I've done my research.
Very impressive. Can we talk about some of your stories? Are you able mentally to get into that?
Of course, yeah.
Okay. So tell us kind of what was going on with you. You said you were really just getting attacked.
Yeah, well, like I said from the beginning, the book was an answer to a string of nighttime assaults I was experiencing. I don't know if it was like 10 years ago. We lost track of time at this point, but it was a little bit ago. And so I would get woken up in the middle of the night with steely, invisible hands gripped around my throat, choking me.
Oh, wow.
Evil whisperings behind my ear, like in some kind of weird demonic language. It kind of sounded like a jumble of buzzing bees, and I don't know what they were trying to speak into into me, but I would imagine it was nothing good.
So you couldn't make out what it was saying?
No, it was like
wow.
it was an unintelligible language. So it was whatever they were speaking. It was like their own kind of language, and like chest depressions like into the bed, like an iron being kind of pressed into the bed. Some people would have described that as the old hag, but it's much more intense than that. Bitings and scratchings and things of that nature. And not only that, I wasn't the only one going through it at that time, because at the time I was an intercessory prayer leader for a ministry church I belong to, and we have a prayer night. And so at this prayer night, I asked the people there. I said, raised my hand. I said, "Is anybody else kind of experiencing these kinds of things at night?" And then one by one, these hands started to raise.
Oh, wow.
It was like 30 people. It was like 13 out of 30 people raised their hands. And so that's when I realized like there was, something, deeper and darker kind of going on. And it got me mad that all of these people were being attacked, and myself included. And I know the last thing that these dark forces or these demonic spirits want is to be exposed. They operate in secrecy. They operate in darkness. And so I said, all right, you're going to attack me. You're going to attack, these people. Well, I'm going to attack back. And that's why I wrote the book, is because, you're going to hit me. I'm going to hit back. And Demons Among Us is an answer to those attacks.
So this isn't something that happened to you as like a child or a teenager. Like, this is recent.
Yeah, this is recent. Yeah. So
Wow.
this is I can't exactly. I don't know if it was 10 years ago, 8 years ago, 5 years ago. I don't quite remember how long ago, but it's a recent past. Yeah.
Yeah, you were well an adult.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
how long would you say that this went on, or does it still go on?
This was like a week to 10 days string of things, like a week or 2 weeks, somewhere around there. And and things still go on, time to time, sometimes more often than I'd like. But these things still go on. In fact, one of my latest experiences, it's not in the book, but it was it came after I had published the book and everything. And my father had passed away in 2021, and I was cleaning out his closet, and I found an old faded green sweater that he just never threw anything away. And then I found a Miami Hurricanes shirt that he had saved or whatever. And, just found some stuff going through the closet. And then, so that night I go to sleep. I was trying to go to sleep, and I sensed something enter my room. And when I look, it's my father. He's standing there. And he's wearing this green faded sweater, an old sweater, and he's holding the folded up Miami Hurricanes shirt. And just to give you a visual image, my dad, he looks a lot like Danny DeVito. So he's a short Italian guy, you know, and he looks like he could be Danny DeVito's brother.
That's a great visual.
Yeah. So he sits there. He's standing there in this faded green shirt that I know that sweater that I know he wouldn't ever be caught wearing, nowadays. And he's standing there, and I'm like, and it's just off the sweater alone, I'm already skeptical. So but this is a spitting image of my father. It's just undeniable. And so, but I'm looking at him, and then he starts walking toward me, and he kind of comes in for a hug. Now I'm laying down, so the hug is like awkward, So he comes in for this awkward hug, and I don't hug back because I know something's going on. I feel this unnerving presence coming off of him.
Wow.
And so he goes in for a hug. I don't hug back, but he as he's pulling back his head, and it's right in front of mine, the sides of his face start kind of like burning away, like a cigarette paper, like a burning off the sides, and what's left in the middle is this skull with two gleaming yellow eyes boring into me, with trying to create this fear. It was like the face of a fearful face. It was trying to, staring over me with this fearful face and those little yellow eyes. But the skull itself, it wasn't like white or anything like that. It was very strange because it had like this endless dimension to it. It looked like you were looking into space. Like there was such depth to it that it just was like looking into space. It's the only way I can describe it.
Yeah.
So and that was, it was terrifying, but I've been through these kinds of things before. And so plus I had my suspicions from as soon as I saw the green sweater that something was amiss,
Yeah. So needless to say, that wasn't your dad.
No, needless to say, no, it definitely was not my dad.
That was not a pleasant visit.
No, it was not my father by any means.
Wow. Man. Maybe I should turn a light on in my house right now.
Yeah, happy Halloween, everybody.
Yeah, come on now. With everything that you've experienced, well, before I get into that, I do have this question. Because you said, you were in this prayer group. There was like 30 people that were going through this all at the same time. Did you ever tie it to some kind of like connection? Like, was there something happening, within your group there?
Well, I mean, what happens is I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. So whenever you decide to become a believer or a follower of Jesus Christ, that puts a target on your back to demonic attacks and demonic assaults. People think it's the opposite, like, oh, if you believe in God, you believe in Jesus, these things aren't going to happen. But it's the opposite that's true, because basically what happens is you switch sides, you switch teams, and so that sets you up as a target and an enemy. And that's why these things continue to happen, and these things happen. And the higher you go in ministry, the more you're going to be attacked. And and for a position such as intercessory prayer leader, to those uninitiated, it doesn't sound like much, but in the spirit world, it's a very, very high position, and one that these demonic forces want to stop, because you've become a threat to their kingdom, you become a threat to their cause, and you have great power over them through prayer or spiritual warfare. Jesus himself gave his believers and his followers a very, very, very supernatural power that he put into to his followers, and he said, "I give you all the power. I give you power to trample on snakes and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy." The enemy being Satan and his fallen angels and demons. So he's given this a heavenly supernatural power to frail human beings to overcome beings and entities that are far greater than humanity or than humans, to overcome them.
Yeah.
And so these forces know the power that's been given and what true believers are equipped with, and that's why you become a target of these attacks.
Let me get you to clarify just real quick, because I know I have listeners from all across the spectrum as far as faiths and religions and beliefs and all that. So for those that don't know, can you explain what an intercessory prayer warrior does?
Yeah, and then it's just, well, we'll say prayer leader or prayer, so what the role or function of an intercessory prayer leader is to you pray over the needs of the people, but when you're in functioning in a deep role of intercessory prayer, you're trying to take dictation from God. What do you want me to pray for? What is the target? What do you want? So it takes a lot of hearing in the spirit until and to hear what he wants you to pray. And because that's effective prayer, I liken it to sharpshooting. Now you could take an AK-47 and an AR-15 and just blast bullets all over the place, but you're really not hitting a target, right? So what you want to do is you really want to hear these commands, and you want to pray these targeted prayers. And when you operate on that level, you have very, very targeted intercession. And what that does, what we say in the Bible, it pulls down strongholds, meaning that, and the strongholds being demonic, where the demonic has put their grip into. It's like, it's where the enemy is hunkered down, where these strongholds are. And so you really want to pull down these strongholds and the principalities and powers that kind of function in the world around us, to stop their plans and their schemes.
Yeah, very well said.
Yeah, I'm trying. It's hard when you try to talk about spiritual things, and I know not a lot of people don't have experience with this. It's hard to kind of articulate.
No, I got you. I'm a church boy too. I'm all about it. But I know I do have listeners from all over and that's a great way to explain, what you do in that role. We've actually been having a huge conversation on Twitter and on different social media, people messaging me and asking me about faith, because, for me, I'm an ordained minister. I'm very involved with my church. And then people say, okay, well, there's also the paranormal, so how do you explain that? And, you say, hey, my Bible's full of all kinds of paranormal, supernatural stories.
Right.
You kind of have to believe in everything. We're talking about angels and demons. They kind of go together. It's all part of the book.
Yeah.
So with your beliefs, here you are, a church man going into this, and then you write a book on, demonic attacks. How do you explain that? How do you project, who you are and make it through with that kind of outlet?
I just sensed that the book was something that needed to be out there.
Yeah.
In a sense, for some reason, I sensed this urgency and this anointing or this unction or this driving to get this out into the public. And I think it was important for us to kind of understand how these things operate and function around us without us even knowing it. Because going back to the time when I asked everybody if they were experiencing these things. Now this group knew that they were demonic attacks and that they were influencing and affecting their lives, right? And then I thought, well, how many people are unsuspecting? How many people are dealing with, spiritual or supernatural powers functioning in and around their lives and in society and influencing them, and them not even having a clue or even knowing about it? So what I really want to do is open the eyes of people, not so much like inside the church, but for those outside the church, so they can see how things are actually really functioning behind the veil of the unseen world. And I go into it by, I talk about some of what demons are, right? So that, first of all, the demons are fallen angels. They are rebellious angels that were basically expelled from heaven. And they did not lose their powers. They did not lose any of their cunning, any of their intellect, any of their powers. They simply lost their home and they were cast to earth. Mm-hmm. And they're not in hell because that's actually a prison sentence for a later time at another judgment. And so basically, this is their home, and Satan believes he rules this world. And so what they do is how they function is not so much by, you won't know them so much by their personal names, but you'll know them by their functions or their roles. And there are such things as spirits of fear. Fear is a spirit that's operating and has operated very strongly within the past 2 years. Spirits of suicide, spirits of depression, spirits of greed, and spirits of pharmakoi, where we get our word pharmacy from, porneia, where we get the word pornography from, or spirits of lust. And so all of these things people have not really even considered that there might be a spiritual component to these things that they might be wrestling with. And that's why I wrote the book.
Very neat. That's very cool, man. I do appreciate it's a deeper appreciation, once you're at that level of faith and then you're dealing with what you're dealing with, if that makes sense. And then want to, put it out there because, even in the Christian world, it's very I'll say taboo, right? And
well, it shouldn't be.
it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. But I mean, there are a lot of different denominations where it is very taboo, and good for you for putting it out there. Getting back into a story, because I want to make sure we have enough time for another story.
Okay.
For you, we're talking about like the face of evil and fear and things that you dealt with. What was one point that you would say was really your, I don't want to say breaking point, but like the scariest thing you had to deal with?
Well, the scariest thing I had to deal with is actually, it's chapter 3 in the book. And
you put it at the beginning.
Yeah, pretty much. I think it's chapter. I'm pretty sure it's chapter 3, but yeah. And the story is this. So I was writing at a local newspaper in the marketing department, and I was caught in a round of layoffs. So I got fired, which meant I lost my really swanky apartment downtown, and I moved out west to a home that a family member had just kind of left behind. And so the home was sitting there for like 6 months. And so when I pulled up to the house, it really looked like the monsters lived there. It was just, I mean, it was dilapidated. The grass was brown and overgrown, and there were drifts of sand in the driveway, and the fence was raw and colorless, and it was dilapidated, and even the fence door itself was hanging from one hinge and creaking in the breeze. And I was like, this has all the hallmarks of a haunted house. And to make it even creepier, it was a townhome, so on the second floor had these square bay windows, large square bay windows that looked over the property like these two vacant eyes, and it really had this Amityville horror effect. So like, and this was the home I decided to take shelter in. So so one night I'm there, and the main bedroom is on the upstairs on the second floor, and so I'm laying there and trying to go to sleep, and all of a sudden I smell this smell. It's this rotten, like dead animal with like a sulfury chemical kind of note of a smell.
Oh, wow.
And it's just wafting through the home, and I'm like, what is that? And so I get up and I go downstairs and I look in the garbage. There's no garbage, and I check the garbage disposal. It's not that. And then I look up at the air vent, and so I get a chair and I hike up on the chair and smell the air vent, and this rot is just blowing onto my face. So it's coming from the air vent, and I'm like, I have a suspicion something's going on here. So I get off the chair and I cut the power to the AC from the utility box. I get back up on the chair and put my face to the vent, and now that rotting, chemically sulfury death smell is still blowing out of the air vent onto my face with no power and no mechanical assistance. It's blowing out on its own now. And so I'm like, okay.
Oh no.
What am I in for tonight?
Oh.
And so I put the AC back on because I live in Florida, and you cannot live in Florida without air conditioning.
Yeah, facts.
And so, death smell or not, I needed the AC. So I go back upstairs. I try going back to sleep. I'm tossing and turning, and I'm kind of on my side. And then at some point, it's 3:33 in the morning, and I hear something call my name, and it says Michael, and it's really slow and long and creepy as hell.
I'd say.
And so something called my name out of the darkness, and it sounded very close yet very far away, like it was coming from like the bowels of a cave. And so when I rolled over, I looked up, and there's this black figure looming over my bed, and it's cloaked and hooded. It's tall, lanky, with crooked shoulders, and deep in the cowl of its hood I could see the semblance of a face, and its head is cocked, and it's got this broad smile, menacing smile, and it's looking down at me, and with that menacing grin. And then I feel something at my chest, and I look down, and out of its, it's the hollows of its sleeve, there's a clawed hand raking up my chest, and it felt its claws on my skin, and it was moving like teasingly, mockingly, slowly up my chest, and it was intent was to kill me or choke me, and you could feel what was coming off of this spirit, the hatred that it had for me and humanity, really. It was this hot hatred coming off of it, like bands of heat. And it was, not only could you feel it like on your skin, but I felt it burning through me like boiling tar. And I looked, for some reason, I glanced at the clock, and the clock was flashing 3:33. 3:33, red against the night and the black thing at my bedside. And the strange thing was like, so it had eyes, like you could see eyeballs, but there was no light in them. Like you have light in your eyes.
Yeah.
There was nothing but deadness, absolute deadness in its eyes. And the gown itself, the cloak itself, was very, very, it was very strange because it was at the bottom of it was flowing like it was underwater.
Oh, wow.
And the figure itself was as much as it was physical, it was spiritual, as like at the bottom of its gown, you could see through parts of it. So, I mean, it looked very, very 3D and very physical, like a body in every sense of the word. But at the end, at its robe, the bottom of its robe, I could see through parts of it. And it was weird because I remember thinking like, wow, there's like a real beauty to its movement, the way it was going, like underwater. And the gown itself, it wasn't shreds or anything like that, but it was like neat rectangular strands, kind of like in Florida we have these vertical blinds, vertical, it was like vertical bands or strands, you know. And it was gray, black, going back to black, and so it was in layers. So the deeper the layer, the blacker it got, and so it looked like looking into that face I explained earlier, like it was just deep space. The same thing with the bottom of its robe; it just looked like it could go on forever, and so. The reason why it was the most scariest thing was because I've gone through a lot of experiences, but this is the first time something had appeared in such a physical form, and it was touching my body as with a touch as real as any other touch, physically, So the spiritual thing, entered into the natural world and was physically touching my body.
Man.
And so that was terrifying.
I'm sure you just gave everybody listening goosebumps. Tell people how they can find you. Are you open to, let's say people want to reach out to you and talk to you, discuss things?
Sure. Yeah.
How would they do that?
Yeah. Well, you can reach out to me. I'm on Instagram at m.r.gorga and at Facebook at MR Gorga.
And then where can they find your book?
They can find Demons Among Us, Shocking Real-Life Stories from the Paranormal. It's an Amazon #1 bestseller. You can find that at Amazon. Right now, I have the Kindle version available for just $1.99, and the print version is available as well. And so you can get that at Amazon, and I should have an audiobook version coming soon.
Are you doing the reading?
I did the reading, yes. I did the reading. It actually turned out to be more of an elaborate process than I thought. I found out that it's just not reading into a microphone, and I have a lot of respect for voice actors and those who do audiobooks.
How much water did you go through?
How much what?
Water.
Water, apples, orange juice, you name it.
That's awesome. MR Gorga, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being on the show this week. I'm sure everybody definitely got something out of that.
Well, thanks for having me on, and hopefully you pick up the book and you can experience this book for yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. You have a great night.
Thanks, you too. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
And with that, the fire is out. Thank you so much to MR Gorga. Thank all of you for listening each week. I appreciate you. If you haven't had the chance to connect with me online, make sure you go to Fireside Paranormal Hub on Facebook. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter at Fireside Parapod, Parapod. Also on TikTok. The website is firesideparanormal.com. You can get all that sweet, sweet Fireside merch. And make sure you check out the Patreon, patreon.com/Fireside Paranormal. Tiers start at just $1. A lot of fun stuff going on, a lot of bonus audio. We have the interview-only section of the show, as well as the after-interview conversations with the guests. A lot of cool topics come up in those conversations. So patreon.com/Fireside Paranormal. And that is all the time we have for this week. Remember, next week is the Halloween episode. Get me those stories. Email me at firesideparanormalpodcast@gmail.com. And until next week, don't be afraid, only believe.